The test is going to be Monday. Monday. So Monday, we are going to report to the Commons for this exam. We'll go over the review today, and then we'll go from there. I'm not exactly sure what we're doing tomorrow. It will depend on how far I get today. But tomorrow we will not have instruction concerning World War II. We may watch a video. We may do some different things. How many people? There's several not going to be here tomorrow. Is there? Yeah. So if there's anything on the guidance website, you check it out. If it doesn't have anything, then we did not do anything that pertains to anything you'd have to have done. I would simply prepare yourself for the test on Monday. Okay, here we go, Dane Bennett. Here's what you're going to do for me. You're going to answer this fine question here. List the major Allied powers in World War II.
United States, Britain, and Russia.
Is that correct? Yes. Mr. Jeffries, I want you to list the major Axis powers in World War II.
Germany, Italy, and Japan.
Very good. Okay, that'll be on the test for sure. Okay, Mr. Tigner, on what front of the European theater of World War II did the Soviet Union face Germany, Bulgaria, Finland, Hungary, and Romania?
That was the Eastern Front.
Be the Eastern Front. Very good. Miss Anderson, Germany's invasion of Europe across the English Channel against the British and French was on what front of the European theater of World War II? Western Front. Very good. Maddie, on what front of the European theater of World War II did the United States, Great Britain, and Australia fight the Germans and Italians in North Africa? Southern Front. Very good. Siobhan, my dear, in the War in the Pacific theater of World War II, list the countries other than the United States that were pitted against Japan.
Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand.
Very good. There you go. Ivan, before World War II came to an end, how many nations took part in the conflict? How many nations took part in the conflict before World War II had ended?
Before it ended, like 50?
Is that right?
50
Yep. More. Your answer should be more than 50.
More than 50.
Okay. Kellyanna, give me one main cause of World War II.
The rise of dictatorships.
What's that?
The rise of dictatorships.
Okay, and Emily, give me one example of rise of dictatorships across the world.
So, just like the guy. Like,
No, not said. I don't want names yet.
Then what do you want?
I want an example of rise of dictators across the world.
I don't know then.
Sure you do.
No, if you know what I mean, I don't know. What do you mean, like, I don't know what you're asking for.
Okay, why did that cause a war? The rise of dictatorships across the world. It's a little bit difficult question. Okay, Paris?
So, there were totalitarian rulers after World War I, in the countries of Italy, Russia, Germany, and Japan, and they suppressed individual freedoms and they wanted total control.
Very good. That's a very, very good answer. The brief answer could be, the example was that there was a growing number of totalitarian rulers, and the issue with that was because those rulers came from the most powerful countries across the globe. Now, Paris went on to say Italy, Russia, Germany, and Japan, and that's good, but you could just basically state that we had a growing number of totalitarian rulers or dictators, and because the reason it caused war is because they came from the most powerful countries across the globe. Okay, very good. Okay, Brady, give me another main cause of World War II.
Very interesting question.
Yes, it is.
That would be problems following World War I.
Very good. Problems following World War I. Now give me an example of that, Hunter.
The Germans kind of cheated.
Cheated about what?
They were just on the reason.
But you know, you're going to give me another one. The Germans felt cheated over the treaty that followed World War I. Okay? Delaney, give me another example.
There was really bad inflation.
Where?
Germany, which led to unemployment, which led to people starving.
Which led to, might as well go back to war,
Yeah.
because it's the only way to improve ourselves. So the answer to that would be that inflation took over Germany after World War I. Many Germans were unemployed and starving to death, and as a result of that situation, Germany believed war was the only answer to fix their problems. Remember, you're in the second year, kiddos, of AP US History, so we expect detailed answers. You know, we don't use they and those types of things. And again, you answer questions as if someone that doesn't know anything about American history is trying to figure it out. And what's the third example, Michaela? Problems following World War I.
With the Greek,
No, that's another problem. I'm looking for an example of the main cause of which is problems following World War I. One example is that the Germans felt cheated over the treaty following World War I. Another problem was that inflation took over Germany after World War I. Many Germans were unemployed and starving to death, and as a result, they felt war was their only avenue. What was another example of problems that we faced that Germany faced following World War I? And Hunter threw it out. Emily, go ahead here.
That's the only story I've read that.
Really, Taylor?
they thought because they disarmed all the cash.
Yeah, the Germans felt they were forced to disarm past reason following World War I. And there's one more, Casey. One more reason, example of problems following World War I, other than the Germans felt treated over the treaty following World War I. The Germans were forced to disarm past reason following World War I. Inflation took over Germany. Many Germans were unemployed and starving to death. And because of that situation, they believed war was the only answer to fix their problems. But also, the Germans felt they had to take what? Full responsibility for the war. So I'm going to ask you for one, but there actually are several. So the question will be, list the three main causes of World War II and one example of each cause. We've covered two. What's the third one, Olivia?
Greed for land by dictators.
Greed for land by dictators. And what's an example of that, Sage? You could give me any one of four examples. You could tell me that Adolf Hitler was the dictator of Germany, and he longed for the conquest of Europe, especially Northern Africa, Poland, and Russia. Or you could tell me what, Josh? Who was another dictator?
Joseph Stalin,
Okay, and where was he from?
Russia,
And what was he?
he wanted to spread communism.
Very good. Okay, JC, give me another example.
Benito Mussolini.
Yep, leader of. Okay,
And he wanted the Mediterranean Sea and anything that the Germans didn't want.
okay, and the Middle East. You want the Mediterranean Sea, the Middle East, and any other land in Europe that the Germans were not interested in. And now, Sage, what was the last one? Who were the last dictators? You don't even have to go with him. All you have to do is go with the Japanese military. We'll make it easy on you. The
Yeah.
Japanese military, where did they control?
They wanted Far East and as much land as possible.
They wanted the Far East and as much land as possible. Where? In Australia? In Iceland? Where do they want the most land as possible? In this big body of water known as the ocean. There's only two. Take a 50-50 chance. You sure seem a little pacified. Yeah, Pacific. Okay. So your answer to that third one would be greed for land by leaders of Germany, Italy, and Japan. And you could give an example of Adolf Hitler from Germany, say where he's from, that he longed for the conquest of Europe. I'll just leave it at that. Longed for the conquest of Europe. Benito Mussolini, Italy. He wanted the Mediterranean Sea, the Middle East, and any land in Europe that Germany was not interested in because he was not interested in land in the Pacific. And you could mention the Japanese military. Obviously, they were controlling Japan. They wanted to win control of the Far East and as much land as possible in the Pacific Ocean. And we'll leave it at that. We will not mention Joseph Stalin because he was not really greedy for land. I just wanted to point out he wanted to spread communism. So the three examples are Hitler, Mussolini, and the Japanese military. You good there? All right, that's a big part of the test, so make sure you know that. Tristan, what was Adolf Hitler's invasion of Poland on September 1st, 1939 referred to as? What do you call that, Pete, when you get your cornerbacks up close to the line and rush the passer in a defensive situation? You call that a blitz? Oh, just I was curious, I was thinking about that last night. So I'm looking for that, back to on tag, I'm looking at that Adolf Hitler's invasion of Poland on September 1st, 1939 was what?
Blitzkrieg?
Blitzkrieg, very good, yeah, thank you. Okay, Kendra, you didn't think I was gonna miss you back there, did you, dear? Who became Prime Minister of Great Britain who had a rare gift for leadership just prior to the Battle of Britain? He'd be really famous on Sunday if he lived on top of the mountain. Used to be a cigarette called that too, didn't it? I know. You know about cigarettes? Oh, come on, dear. Who was that man? I know you got it in there. You are an awesome woman. Let's look and see. What's his name? Winston Churchill. Very good. Winston Churchill. Keisha, my dear, thought I'd forget you back there. Give me one of the two requirements for all men between the ages of 21 and 35 according to the Burke-Wadsworth Act. One of the two requirements for all men between the ages of 21 and 35 according to the Burke-Wadsworth Act.
And register for the draft.
They had to register for the draft. Very good. Sheriff, what was the other requirement?
They were required to take 1 year of military training.
Required to take 1 year of military training. Very good. Okay, Dalton wants you to briefly explain the Lend-Lease Act that Congress passed to allow the United States to send supplies and aid to Great Britain and other allied countries. What was the story of it?
Well, it was said that because the other, like Britain and other countries couldn't afford to get supplies from us, we would lend it to them and just give them materials like planes, ships, tanks.
And they would pay us back when? After the war. Very good. What happened is Britain and other allied countries were no longer to pay the United States for the materials that we were sending over to aid them in their conflict in Europe, and so they passed the Lend-Lease Act, which allowed those countries to lend or lease these military materials and supplies with the idea that they would be paid back at the end of the war. Okay, Brady, in July of 1941, the Japanese troops began to occupy French Indochina. What two actions did President Roosevelt take? You give me one. He froze all there. Who's there? Okay, froze all the Japanese assets in the United States. Could he freeze the assets, Japanese assets in France? No, so make sure you're detailed there. He froze all Japanese assets in the United States. What else did he do, Siobhan?
Placed embargo,
Place an embargo on?
gas, machine tools, scrap iron, and steel.
Very good. Gas, machine tools, scrap iron, and steel. Which one was most important, Ivan, though, that the Japanese were most concerned about of what he embargoed?
Assets?
Well, what? No, well, they were concerned about, I mean, of the four products.
gas.
Gasoline, very good, okay. Okay, the Japanese got a little bit ornery, Morgan, and they enlisted 3 demands upon the United States on November 20th, 1941. Give me one of those demands. Demanded we would resume trade with them by doing what? How would we resume trade with them? We would have to unfreeze Japanese assets in the United States. So don't mess that up. You're right, they'd have to resume trade, but the only way we resume trade is if we unfreeze all Japanese assets in the United States. Now, you go back to you when you say trade, they said we would trade with them again. Is that really what they said, or what did they say specifically? Well, what in particular were they asking for? Gasoline. So one of the demands was the United States must supply Japan with as much gasoline as it needed. So they really didn't say you will resume trade with us. They said you will unfreeze Japanese assets in the United States, and they said you will give us as much gasoline as we want. Okay, Casey, what was the third thing they demanded of the United States on November 20th, 1941?
We have to cease all aid to China.
We had to cease all aid to China, who was an ally of ours at the time and an enemy of theirs, obviously. Okay, you're going to need 2 of those 3. All right, let's kind of get down to the nitty-gritty here. Here's the question. Compare the losses and casualties of the Americans compared to the Japanese during the fateful Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. And it's going to ask for American losses and casualties first, and it's going to give you 3 answers. So here's how we're going to answer this. I think you can remember this if you're any kind of a blackjack player. 21 American ships were either sunk or damaged. Okay, 21, you know. $188 aircraft were destroyed, 159 were damaged. I think you can probably remember that. 188 aircraft were destroyed, 159 damaged. The third example, we'll just round it up, or down. 2,400 American sailors and soldiers were killed, approximately 1,100 wounded. 2,400 American sailors were killed, sailors and soldiers, and approximately 1,100 wounded. Okay? Now we're going to ask you for the Japanese losses and casualties. I think you can probably remember this. 64 pilots were killed and 1 captured. So you can retire at 65, but if you're a year short, you're not very happy with things, so you got that 1 more year. So 64 were killed and 1 was captured. That would equal 65. You were 1 captured Japanese pilot short of retirement. See, look at this. Isn't that perfect? How to remember that? Didn't have any trouble with that. 29 aircraft were lost, 5 midget submarines lost. Okay? And I'll tell you what I'll do to be nice. On the second part of the Japanese losses and casualties, you can either say 29 aircraft lost or 5 midget submarines lost. You don't have to have both. Okay? All right. Miss Anderson, who did the lone nay vote come from in Congress after President Roosevelt asked Congress for a formal declaration of war against Japan following the events at Pearl Harbor? Jeanette Rankin. Very good. Kellyanna, my dear, who is the American general who is quoted as saying, quote, "A Jap's a Jap. It makes no difference whether he is an American citizen or not"?
John DeWitt.
John DeWitt. Very good. John DeWitt. Taylor, my dear, during the time of relocation of Japanese Americans in the United States following Pearl Harbor, what percentage were actually native born in the United States? 67%. Very good. JC, my dear, who was the first Japanese American to resist the relocation movement by the United States government?
Gordon, you say Hirabashi.
What do you say?
I thought, I don't know.
Hey, I say Hirabashi, you say what?
Hirabayashi, I don't know.
Hirabayashi, whatever. Hirabayashi. So you'll need to know that, including the spelling, so get that down. I know, but I lied.
Oh my God, Japanese names aren't that hard.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Hey, you could go Hirabayashi. You figure it out any way you want, okay? But he's the man, and you're right, and thank you for getting that in. Okay, Maddie, in 1988, what 2 things did Congress do and write the relocation policy of Japanese Americans during World War II? What were the 2 things that did to right that wrong?
They issued a public apology and then awarded the $8,000
Yep.
whatever you wanna call them, $20,000 each.
Very good. Okay, whatever you wanna call it. That's very good, that's right.
How do you
Yeah,
describe that?
they issued a public apology, and gave $20,000 to each of the surviving 80,000 Japanese people. That's good enough. Okay? Okay, Ivan, give me one way the United States government financed World War II. One way they financed. There's two.
They use war bonds.
Okay, and how much did they bring in on that?
67% or 268 billion.
Okay, and what was the other way they financed that thing, Emily?
Taxes,
And what percent did that bring in?
for 23.
Very good, and how much money?
I do not know.
Okay, and I don't care if you know it. Just know the two ways we finance the war, which would be issuing of war bonds and taxes. Okay, that's it. It'll be 40 answers, 2 points apiece. The test will be worth 80. That'll be Monday. We probably will not take even close to the whole period on this thing, and therefore we'll be back in action and begin our World War II Part 2. So there's your review. Be ready Monday. Report for the comments.